I see so many photographers and so many people who want to be photographers that do not value their time. And your time is ridiculously valuable, and you can earn a lot of money by spending your time on the right things.
Welcome to the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. I'm Angela Nicholson, and I'm the founder of SheClicks, which is a community for female photographers. In these podcasts, I talk to women in the photographic industry to hear about their experiences, what drives them, and how they got to where they are now. This episode features Amy Bateman, a former physiotherapist turned creative photographer who specialises in capturing people, places, and artisan products on camera. She won several major photography competitions as an amateur and became a freelance photographer in 2019. Amy has also published a book, 40 Farms, which combines her farming background with her photography. Hi Amy, welcome to the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks ever so much for having me, Angela.
Oh, it's great to see you. Now, can we start right at the beginning of your photographic career? Because you started life working as a physiotherapist, didn't you? And you transitioned to be a photographer. So how did that career change come about for you?
It wasn't planned. It certainly wasn't planned. I was just, I was a physiotherapist. I had a private clinic here in Kendal, and I was very much the busy businesswoman and not having a family. And then the family came along and the hormones changed the way my brain worked. And it was actually really nice bringing up these little people. Mm-hmm. But equally, we discovered very quickly that we had 3 children quite close together because I had twins, first of all. And having 3 under 3 and 3 in nappies was very expensive for childcare. And for me to keep working full time would have only meant I was bringing in $5,000 a year. So we just decided, it's just not worth it. So I gave up the work, gave up the clinic. And that was quite strange because I had a feeling of kind of grief that part of me, I was giving up on part of me because I was almost defined by my job as a physio. It's all I've known in my working life. Anyway, I managed to get my head around that and brought up the 3 children early years here on our farm. And we farm just outside Kendal on the edge of the Lake District. And so I learnt to farm alongside my husband and looking after the children. But I still needed something just for me, a little bit for me. And so I started taking a camera out. I got left a little bit of money and I was able to buy an entry-level DSLR. So I started off shooting Nikon and just fell in love with photography. And then my husband saw that I was really enjoying the photography. And for Mother's Day, courtesy of my children, I was sent on an adult education class at the local art centre, which is 6 weeks, an introduction to digital photography, and was taught how to switch off auto onto manual. And that was it. I was just hooked. I just loved what I could create and being able to be in control of the functions on the camera. It was staggering. I just could not believe what I was able to do. But a big shift came from using the internet. I found that because living rurally and my small children, my husband only wanted to see so many of my pictures, but I wanted to share this newfound glory that I was like, oh, look at these pictures, look what I can capture. And so I hopped onto the internet and found on Twitter there's a fantastic community of photographers who are incredibly generous with their time, their comments, their praise. Really lovely group of photographers. And it's still growing. It's still there, even though it's changed to X and it's all a bit different. And those photographers, I got sort of used to seeing a massive wide range of genre of photography and got access to competitions, online competitions. So the big ones are hashtag Wex Mondays, run by Wex Photo Video. Now they've changed the layout of it a little bit. There's hashtag FS Sprint Monday, which is photo speed. And there's hashtag Share Mondays, which is run by the photographers. So if you win a competition one week, you get to judge the next week. And I found by being introduced to these competitions, it was a massive range of photos you were exposed to every single week. And of course, I had my photo phone with me all the time, and I could jump on Twitter when I should have been maybe feeding the cows or when the kids were having a nap or something like that. So I was always looking at photography. And I started entering some of these competitions, and the feedback was fabulous straight away. And I got a lot of success quite quickly, which is incredibly motivating and led me to enter more competitions.
It is really interesting, actually, because we do have this sort of vision, I think, sometimes of the lone photographer out capturing the world, whether it's documentary photography or landscape photography or street. But it's really nice to connect with other photographers. You might go into the wilds of the Lake District to capture some of your images, but it's really nice to be able to show people your pictures and to ask for comments or just say, I'm really pleased with this one, and get a little bit of feedback.
Oh, without a doubt. And that's what's really helped grow my photography. I would say I had a massive learning curve and getting that critical feedback. And if you don't want it, you can just say, or if you want it, it's better to invite it. You can say critical feedback, welcome. But I did find, and this is why I love the fact that you've generated SheClicks, because I'm sure there are people in the same sort of boat that maybe don't want to ask the whole world, but want a bit more of a female perspective on things. And that's great. And the thing is about entering those sort of competitions, I developed a really thick skin very quickly because hundreds of people enter those competitions every single week. And there are some fantastic photographs. I might add at this point, if anybody doesn't know about the competitions, you have to enter a picture that you've actually taken within the last week, which is great for amateur photographers because you can compete up with the pros because they can't dip into their beautiful bag of past archival shots and stuff. And it's literally within that last week. And so I was finding that I'd be entering these competitions, and when you don't get selected and somebody else does, and you look at their picture, you think, okay, that's good. And you get used to rejection. And so I developed a really thick skin quite quickly, and photography is incredibly subjective. I've had so many arguments with camera club judges, which I actually quite enjoyed the sport. But it is remarkably subjective, and I think people get too wrapped up in believing that everybody should think their images are fabulous or a image is fabulous, and it isn't. You might just hit a pocket of people that like them, and that's fine.
And also, I think it's important to remember that it's not a personal comment. It's about the photograph. It's not about you or your interpretation. But often, because we pour so much thought into our photography, it can be quite hard to sort of keep away from that and remember that it isn't a personal comment.
Oh, without a doubt. And that separation from personal and the professional, I guess, because I'm a professional now, but even for amateur photographers, it's really important. And you do have to have a bit of water over a duck's back, because for what something is a piece of art for somebody else, even yourself, somebody else may not think so. But I do see people getting quite personal about things and having a bit of a hard time. And I don't know what to say on that. I know that I developed a thick skin very quickly, and that's helped massively. And just brush it off and move on.
Yeah. And when you started taking more photographs, you started taking photographs, actually, you got your camera. How quickly did you decide that it was going to be your profession rather than your hobby?
Well, I only actually picked up a camera 7 years ago properly, converted to manual within sort of 6 months of buying that first DSLR. And because I entered the competitions quite quickly, I got quite obsessed. And that obsession meant I was buying Amateur Photographer magazine, Outdoor Photographer magazine. I'd be watching YouTube tutorials and just absorbing so much so that my photography leapt quite quickly, being able to control highlights, lowlights, subject, composition, all that sort of stuff. And so I started entering bigger competitions. And it was really, I won Photo Speed Photographer of the Year in 2018. And I'd only been doing photography 3 years by that point. And I won British Life Photographer of the Year in 2019.
Fantastic.
And I would like to say that it hasn't run since COVID, so I'm actually still British Life Photographer of the Year. So if I'm still British Life Photographer of the Year when I'm 90, I'll still be milking it, Angela.
I think you should. That's fine.
But, I mean, entering the competitions is definitely what helped launch me, because I started off sharing my images on social media. I developed a following. That following were delighted for me for the wins. I mean, a really lovely group of people. But I was getting the exposure from being effectively an award-winning photographer. So I was getting asked for prints. I was being asked to do portraits of families, and I'd started to just dabble a little bit in earning a bit of money, but only just around the edges because I was still bringing up my children. What was the big crux was winning British Life Photographer of the Year coincided with significant change within the farming world. The Brexit vote had occurred, and we knew that we were going to be losing our farm subsidies. Now, the farm subsidies were there not to help farmers farm, they're there to support cheap food. And we knew that we would have to completely change the way we farm in order to maintain our income as a family. So we thought, well, if we added some diversification through myself to our farm, we just add in an income stream so that when the subsidies are fully withdrawn, we can still stand on our own 2 feet. So it was quite fortuitous timing. So when I'd won the British Life Photographer of the Year, we sat down, we wrote a proper business plan. And I think this was the key to success, was being able to actually write down, right, what are we going to do? What goals are we going to achieve? How are we going to achieve those? How much are we spending on marketing? How am I going to chase money? And at the end of the day, when you're a freelance photographer, you're chasing the next commission. And it's that constant feeding the beast in social media, feeding the profile, getting your profile out there to get the jobs. And I thought, well, I just need to focus on what I'm good at. I'm good at photographing farmland because that's where I've learned and practiced. I'm good at photographing the stories within those farmland, the people, the animals. And so I chose to focus solely on portrait people and places here in Cumbria. And I think that business plan was right at the start, was a real key to be able to jump quite quickly to being a fully fledged professional photographer based on the award.
Yeah, and it's interesting because obviously you've been living on your farm quite a while, and it's interesting to see your photography business sort of is very much a part of sustaining that lifestyle of, you know, being on your farm and your husband still being a farmer as well. And obviously you still do quite a bit of farm work, but it's not farming, but it's part of the whole business package, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. When I won Photospeed Photographer of the Year, part of the prize was to spend a day with Doug Chinnery.
Nice.
And if anybody doesn't know who he is, he's fantastic. Oh, he was so generous with his time. And he sat down with me and really helped me try and work out where I wanted my business to go, how I was going to attract work. And he just kept on, he said it several times throughout the day, you know, you've got an absolute USP, Amy, with the farm. You need to market that. You need to go down that route. And I think that is the key. I knew at evening class that people had said it's remarkably difficult to make money out of landscape photography. And okay, I was photographing landscapes, but I generally say I'm an accidental landscape photographer because I love my bed too much. I seriously admire Verity Milligan, not just because of her stunning photography, but because of her capabilities of being able to get up at 4 o'clock or stupid o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
I can't. I use the farm and my children as my excuse, but it's actually I just like my bed. But because he was so positive about trying to use the farm as a USB, and I think that's the key, is to focus on what you're good at, what your experience is and what you know inside out. And that made my farming photography easier because I knew what I was photographing.
And I think writing down a plan like you did, that really helps in those moments of doubt, doesn't it? Because you can look at it and think, no, this is part of the plan, and also helps you justify next steps and things. And also the fact that your husband was on board with that whole process, it really helps kind of shore up the whole, your feeling about it, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is about having a written business plan and going back to it and reviewing it. I do need to review it again because things have changed a lot in this last year. But I'm in my mid-40s, and having a new career in my 40s, I wasn't going to scratch around going just having jacket potatoes for dinner while my career took off. I really needed to support my family. This had to work. And so I very, very quickly was very financial discipline about my prints, for example. How much is, working out the cost of every print. I fortunately won the printer, but even then, now that I'm doing mass production printing, I am off getting that done by third parties. Photospeed very kindly stepped in and said they'd like to do my printing, which is lovely.
Fantastic, yes.
But it's that paying attention to every financial detail and valuing your time. And I see so many photographers and so many people who want to be photographers that do not value their time. And your time is ridiculously valuable, and you can earn a lot of money by spending your time on the right things. And it's that really disciplined approach to, okay, is twiddling on Twitter really going to make me any money today? Or am I going to go and try and find some commissions or work on that project I wanted to do to be able to get some new work? Or maybe there's a skill I need to develop so I can actually get different commissions. And so I would work on some off-camera flash in my spare time so that I could start doing proper portraits out and about, and that helped tremendously. And it's just been really, really disciplined with that bottom line so that your photography is a success.
Yeah. And I think what you're talking about is developing a business mindset, isn't it? It's not just, well, I quite like this photography lark and I'm going to see if I can make a bit of money out of it. You actually sat down and decided, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to approach it, and you're off.
Yeah, exactly that.
And how did you then find your first clients and get those first commissions?
I actually did a bit of photography at our local primary school. So I had three girls in the local primary school. The photographer who'd done sort of the end of school leavers pictures didn't want to do it anymore. So I tagged along with her one day and thought, oh yeah, I can do this. And sold a little gallery afterwards and people would buy the odd picture. And that opened my name up to other friends that wanted portraits, family portraits. I would photograph dogs. Dogs are really, really popular. People love having their dogs photographed. And just trying to develop different ways of photographing the dogs, popping them in the studio with their coat and their lead and boot so that the whole picture tells more of a story. And what I found was that I really enjoy storytelling photography. So every angle of my commission, I try and develop that storytelling into my images. So as I would do more and more people heard about my name, I'd be invited to local businesses, photographing products. So there's a company here called Herdwick Tweed and they wanted their products photographing. But, photographing a beautiful tweed gun slip, you could do quite nicely in a studio. But I took it up onto the fell where the heather was out and I borrowed my stepfather's gun. And I like to tell a story. And it's thinking more about trying to do things a bit differently. There's so many people that are doing photography and we are bombarded with images all day through social media, through all the screens that we're looking at, on the television, bus stops. All day we are bombarded by adverts and images. And you've got to do something really different to make your image stand out so that people spend just that little bit longer looking at your image and to capture the imagination, to tell that story, take the eyes on a journey, whatever you want to do. And I found my way of doing that was through storytelling with my photography. So adding elements in, using the light, using extra props or things like that, or just looking at different ways of taking the photographs. And I think it just led on then, the commissions rolled in on the back of successful work. But I have to admit that winning a major photography competition really helped.
Well, I think, again, it works in a couple of ways. It's, yes, your name gets out there. People are looking at your pictures thinking this is a good photographer. But it also gives you the confidence to approach people or to say yes to a few more projects.
It's really motivating winning a competition like that. I'll tell you a funny thing is I've listened to a couple of your podcasts, quite a lot actually. I do think they're brilliant.
Thank you.
And there's a lot of the women talk about imposter syndrome, and I see it on SheClicks. And I was a qualified physiotherapist. I'd done really well at university, got my degree. I was more than justified being a physiotherapist, and I had dreadful imposter syndrome in my clinic. And I just thought every morning that somebody would knock on the door and just say, come on, Amy, we know you're faking it. You can step aside and give up now. And yet as a photographer, and I've only been to evening classes, I don't have it. And I just don't understand. If anything, more justified, I should have it more. And it's gone entirely. And I don't know whether it's that validation from the competitions or whether I'm just 100% happy doing what I'm doing, because I am like a pig in poo at the moment. I really am. I just...
Well, that's good.
So grateful. But I'm so unbelievably happy that my work doesn't feel like my work. And I know that's a very fortunate place to be, and I don't know whether that helps with the imposter syndrome. I don't know. I'd love to understand it more.
Well, maybe also, because you like your images, you're producing images that you are happy with. Whereas with the physiotherapy, you never really know whether someone's actually better, because they might say, oh, yes, it doesn't hurt as much now, but doesn't it? Or maybe it's that. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe I'm a better photographer than I was a physio. I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah.
I've tried and I've laid in bed analysing it, but I don't care. It's so lovely to have shaken it off.
Good. That's great. So obviously you're a keen advocate of photography competitions. What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about entering a photography competition, or maybe they've just seen one and they're wondering whether they should enter?
Oh, that's a lovely question. I think in the first place, you've got to be in it to win it. I did find that there was loads of competitions. If you actually Google photography competitions, and I did this in my early days, there are a lot out there. I think the ones that I really valued were the ones that were free to enter. There's a lot out there that are purely designed to make money, and I chose to avoid those.
Yeah.
I chose to enter ones that were relatable to the general public, in that I wasn't entering salons. I wasn't interested. The ones that you can do at Camera Club and things like that, because general public who are looking to commission a photographer won't have an idea what they are. So I refrained from putting the time and effort into printing my pictures for, the Camera Club salons. And the way I felt about it was the ones that were in the public eye were the ones that I was entering. British Life Photographer of the Year had a very small entry fee. I did actually enter quite a lot on Photo Crowd. I really enjoyed Photo Crowd. I don't do it so much anymore. And the nice thing is about Photo Crowd is I won books, photography books. I won tripods, because I think I've won about 3 or 4 on there. And it's motivating, really motivating when you do win things. But equally, I think if I hadn't have won them, would I feel as motivated? Well, yes, because I use that as a motivation to get better.
It does make me sad sometimes when somebody will say, oh, well, I'm glad I didn't enter because my pictures aren't as good. And you think, well, firstly, you're not the judge, actually. Who knows why your pictures might get picked. But also, it's you've got to be in it to win it. And if everybody takes that attitude, then there'll only be one person who enters and they win by default. And it kind of devalues the whole competition process.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, if you enter them, have a look at the pictures that actually win afterwards, and then have a look at your own and think, okay, well, maybe what can I do better next time?
Yeah.
Maybe to keep your camera with you more so you don't miss those opportunities where you could capture the nice light as you're driving home from work or something. And in the early days, I don't do it so much now because I don't have a lot of time to process my own images. I had my camera with me all the time. So the moment there was anything, driving the children to school, if there was a beautiful crepuscular ray and it was sticking onto a cow's head, or something really unusual, because I had my camera, I could capture it. And so entering those sort of pictures into competitions, I actually had the content to start with. But then if I didn't win, I did purposely have a look and think, let's have a look. What are they looking for? And really read the instructions first, because every competition is different. Right down to sizing your photographs.
Yes.
Labelling your photographs, making sure they're the right format, double checking absolutely every detail on your image. There's nothing encroaching it. It's absolute bob on focus. Make sure that there is nothing that your photograph can be negatively critical about before you enter it. And only enter is something that you're really, really impressed with, that is technically accurate. Because then if you don't win, then, you've been beaten by a better picture, and they're always out there. But also, not just a better picture, it's a subjectivity. There are lots of competitions where there's only just one person choosing the winner. There are lots of competitions where there's a group of people. And at the end of the day, it just depends if that judge likes your photograph.
Yes. I do remember actually when I used to enter competitions, because I haven't done it for quite a while now, I used to do exactly what you said. I'd look at my picture and think, well, how is this one better? And I'd look at, and it was always something like, certainly in the early days, I'd taken more of a record shot. I hadn't used a particularly interesting angle, or the light wasn't great, or something like that. And you compare it to the winning image, and you can see that they've really thought about the angle, they've thought about the light, and it's just, see it as a learning exercise rather than, oh, well, I knew I wouldn't win because my pictures weren't good enough.
Definitely. Every single step of the way, I made every opportunity a learning exercise. In fact, when I was really keen, I actually debriefed myself after every commission and think, right, okay, what went wrong?
Wow.
What did I not do right? What was I not organised about? What would I do better next time? Would I do differently next time? And I had like a little SWOT analysis of every commission, and I would purposely do that because I I wanted to be the best I could be. And the only way I was going to make this work and be comfortable being a photographer was just being the best I could be. And that means constant working. I've still got a huge amount to learn. There's a lot I don't know about photography, but I'm really enjoying the journey still.
And I think that's a key part of the whole point of being alive, isn't it? To enjoy what you're doing.
Definitely. And there isn't an end to it. It's a constant journey and I'm just loving the ride. It's been a bit of a roller coaster this last year, but yeah, still enjoying it.
Good. Well, last year you published a book, 40 Farms.
I did, yes.
I know that there was some collaboration involved. So can you tell me a little bit about the process of getting your book published, how it came about?
I'd like to say I sought a publisher, but I actually didn't. He approached me, entered some work into a project that a publisher here in Cumbria was involved with. So my publisher is a regional publisher called Dave Felton from a company inspired by Lakeland. And I did this book Through the Looking Glass, which was lockdown creations from the artists of Cumbria. So during the pandemic, he put a call out for artists working in Cumbria in any medium and asked them, right, share what you're doing, share what you're still trying to do whilst we're all locked down, staying at home. And so I took a photograph of my daughter, Rosie, with a lamb. And of course, here on our farm, life continued during lockdown. We couldn't stop the sheep having their lambs. The first one hit I think it was at lambing time. The only thing that was different was the children were at home, and they're never at home for the entirety of lambing time, but they were. So their friends, their schooling and their friends was replaced by farms and the farming and the animals. So Rosie got quite attached to one of the lambs and would go and sit in the back room and play with it. And I knew this back room because I know every inch of our farm. And first thing in the morning, the light would come in there and the overgrowth hadn't occurred. It was early on in the year, so I knew that the light wasn't filtered. But it was a remarkable scene. It was one of those idyllic farming scenes, and I'd had to use HDR because the contrast between the lights and shadows were massive. Rosie did sit still and pose slightly, and I created this image which I just adored, and it was just me being a photographer in lockdown at home. I wasn't creating it for anybody else other than us as a family. But I did enter it afterwards into this project Through the Looking Glass, and it ended up being in the book, and it was part of the exhibition as well and received quite a lot of attention. And even now that photograph's used, quite a lot of people write articles about me or things. And I absolutely adore it. I have it at home printed. It's one of those things about photography. It's a joy photographing my children growing up and capturing these images that I'm really proud of to have on my wall. I think it's really important to put them on your wall. But my publisher saw this image and thought, I know, rang me up and he said, hello, my name's Dave Felton. I've got an idea for a book and I'd really like you to do it for me. And this book was called 60 Farms. And I very quickly, with my business head on, realised that Dave wasn't going to be able to afford me to do 60 farms. I knew how many hours was involved, and publishing, you don't make a lot of money with books. And so I thought about it and I got back to him. I said, Dave, I love the idea, but I think 40 farms would work better. 40 farms is an alliteration and it was more manageable. It wasn't so onerous. We signed a deal. And so I spent 18 months going around Cumbria capturing these farms. And the basis of the book was, it's 40 farms, conversations of change across the landscapes of Cumbria. We're at a massive, massive point of change.
Right.
I could do with actually reading the intro, if I may.
Sure, go for it.
So the nation's collective interest in British farming is at an all-time high. We've got viewing figures for glossy and not so glossy farm TV continue to rise. Publishers are scouting farmyards for the next James Rebanks, and food security leads news bulletins. Farmers are reaching out to Instagram followers worldwide from their sheep pens and mob-grazed meadows. But at the same time, challenges facing agriculture continue to escalate. Land prices rise, staff shortages increase, costs of feed, fertiliser and fuel rocket. Government policy in a post-basic payments, which is the subsidy, world remains at best unclear, and at worst hostile trade deals with countries that don't share the UK high welfare standards. Add in the existential threats posed by climate change, war and corporate land grabs, and a perfect storm gathers above an already fragile landscape. So the aim of the book was to capture images at 40 farms over a 12-month period, and the accompanying conversations that I had with the farmers, frank, sometimes funny, occasionally painful, but always fascinating. Their witness statements of a really unique moment in time. What was really surprising was how successful the book was. It's been out now 14 months and we've sold over 9,000 copies.
Wow.
And I think at the end of the day, it's not just a photography book. It reaches out to people who like their food, who like the countryside, who love the Lake District, who love farming, but equally love photography. And it's a very unusual book to have these stories told. I don't know if you've heard of James Rebanks, but he's a big advocate for nature-friendly farming and writes books on them. But not everybody's going to pick them up because they're just text, whereas my book has got lots of photographs. And as a visual person, I buy into the people telling those stories. I buy into the visual nature of those stories. So being able to tell these farm stories of change, how they are addressing financial issues of succession, how to farm with nature, how to care for the landscape in such an area as the Lake District and still produce really high quality food, but tell it through my stories, for me was just the most remarkable opportunity. I couldn't have designed a better project. It was an absolute joy to work on. But here in Cumbria, the geology of Cumbria is so diverse. We've got the high peaks, the igneous high peaks of the fells, right down to the fertile plains of the Eden Valley, over to the salt marshes at the coast. And the massive range of geology means that here in Cumbria, we've got a huge range of different farms. So we've been able to cover that range of farms from dairy, beef, sheep, tourism ventures, arable farms, estate farms, you name it, we've got it. Young farmers, old farmers, female farmers. There's a relatability so that any farmer or a photographer or anybody across the country can pick it up and relate to stories, to pictures, to landscapes, to somewhere that's familiar to them. And it's still ongoing. So as a body of work, I'm ridiculously proud of it. But I think it goes beyond, much more beyond being a photographer, because it's addressing the landscape and showing that we do care for the landscape as farmers. It's shown that we have got really high standards of food production in this country and we need to support those farmers. It helps people make decisions about the food and the sort of food that they should be buying and where they buy it from. And that's very close to my heart, being farmers ourselves, and we need to support them, and it does that.
That's understandable. Well, a lot of people every year visit the Lake District and don't necessarily see it as an agriculturally productive area, but obviously it is. And I think a book like that helps bring it home what the challenges are and the importance of the location and the people working the land. But how did you actually select the subjects? Were you presented with a list of 40 farms or did you find them?
Well, I found them. Dave and I sat down. Dave also runs a podcast himself called Country Stride, which is about walks throughout the Lake District, meeting interesting people along his way. So he already knew a lot of agricultural practices going on in Cumbria. Our connections being farmers ourselves, but my husband's quite high up in the AHDB, which is the Agricultural and Horticulture Development Board. And so he had a huge number of contacts too. So the long list was about 57 initially until we started whittling it down. The key thing was we needed the range of farms. We wanted to represent the different types of farms, the different types of farmers, the different landscapes. But we also wanted to address the conversations of change, all the impacts that were having, the variables that were having an impact on these farmers, but to tell them in photographs and to be able to, and that's the thing that's been a massive difference, is I'm getting fan mail and handwritten letters and emails all the time, even now, saying, I cannot believe I knew this was happening over my wall. I didn't know this is what they were doing. That's why the farmer was doing that. And I can't believe I've walked in the Lake District all this time and as a tourist, and I didn't know that's why such and such was happening. And so the fact that people are becoming more informed about those landscapes is fantastic. So I think we've kind of covered the range quite nicely.
Good. And you've also exhibited some of those images, or all of the images, haven't you?
Yeah, we have.
I think people often think, oh, yes, we should put on an exhibition. and sort of don't really think about how much work is involved. But how have you found that?
That I could do a podcast on how to do exhibitions, totally. I would like to now say that I could quite successfully curate any exhibition after my experience. It's a totally different thing than doing an exhibition of your own work. Obviously, this is my own work, but as a sort of a paid project, we needed Art Council grants and we needed sponsorship. And so the book was launched at the exhibition at Reged, and we used it as a sort of an opportunity to be able to sell more books, but also to get more people involved in the project. So the gallery up at Reged is 100 square metres, which is massive. As far as independent solo work goes, I remember walking in there when everything was up on the wall and just felt like a different part. I cannot believe this is all my own work in this gallery. This is just ridiculous. But of course, because it's a more involved project, it's not just my pictures that I've taken as a photographer. Do you know what I mean? It's a project entirely on its own, so it's quite different.
Yeah. But
it costs £40,000 to put on.
Right. That's a lot of cash.
And I haven't made that much from my book. It is a lot of cash. So Arts Council grants are really good. Farming is seen as something that the Arts Council like to promote. So they wanted farmers particularly to come in and see the exhibition. They're classed as a minority group for using the arts. So we were able to tick all the boxes in that respect. That helped. Reged were fantastic, and their marketing team and the team up there helped enormously. But what's lovely is that we've now got this exhibition, and we toured with it. So we went to the Windermere Jetty Museum. So we had 60,000 visitors.
Wow.
Up at Reged. Then we had 40,000 at Windermere Jetty. And it's going to open at the Food Museum in Stowmarket in May 2024. So I'm curating that at the moment. And that's in East Anglia. And so here in my studio, I have 3 warehouse crates of all the images, bubble wrapped with foam corners on, ready to go down to the Food Museum. And it's the whole project. It's not just an exhibition of my work. It's the project itself. It's more than that. It's much more of an immersive exhibition because we have videos. So when I was shooting for the actual project, I would also take moving footage. And so I've got like a visual impact of farming in Cumbria. There's an introductory video we did how racism is in the countryside. And so we had an Asian group about access to the countryside. So an Asian group came to the farm. We had a really lovely chat. These Asian ladies who are adventurers, and we talked about access to the countryside, using it as a race point of view. And that video is shown. The whole exhibition is an immersive exhibition because we have lots of crafts on show from the farms, a lot of the produce on show. And so it's not just about the photography, it's much more involved. So that's ongoing. So we're going to be at a food museum for 9 months. And then I'd really like to try and get the exhibition into London. So I'm chasing up some contacts at the moment. I think it needs to be in front of much more people, especially urban dwellers.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I'd love to see it. And, if it comes to London, I think you'll get a huge audience.
Well, that's the plan. And it's not that I want to come to London to sell more books, although it helps. It's the stories. I feel like it's my raison d'etre at the minute to tell these stories so people can understand and make the right choices about their food and understand how the landscape is managed. And rewilding is such a big thing at the moment, and people want to rewild our landscapes, but actually it comes at a cost. We have a lot of people in this country that we need to feed, and it's how do we balance farming with nature, and these stories address that. There are a lot of farmers doing fantastic things, and that's what we need to keep promoting.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's a really good time to go to 6 from SheClicks. So I've got 10 questions from SheClickers, and I would like you to answer 6 of them, please, by choosing numbers from 1 to 10. So if you could choose your first number, please.
Okay, well, my favourite number is number 5.
That's mine as well, actually. I was used to play number 5 when I played football.
Oh, I played 5 in hockey. There we go.
Oh, well, there we go. Okay, given the choice, would you rather photograph people or animals?
That's a brilliant question. Oh, I know the answer, but it's how to justify it. I'd photograph animals I would photograph animals any day. They don't have to pose, they don't have to smile, they're not self-conscious. And capturing in their natural environment is what I really enjoy doing. So I'm afraid it has to be animals, especially Herdwick sheep.
Oh, yes.
And in fact, I do do, if I can promote it a little bit, I do photography courses here on my farm and at 2 of the 40 farms, and people can actually come along with us and get close and personal and photograph herdwicks. And I get as much joy now out of coming away with a decent photograph as when my clients come away and they share photographs and they've got some absolute crackers. It's like, yes, more people photographing sheep, please.
Great. Okay. I'm just looking at the other questions here and thinking, I wonder if you're going to pick that one. So, yes, can I have another number, please?
Oh, okay. Let's go for number 3.
Right. Okay. Do you worry that you'll be forever taking photographs of sheep? Or are the possibilities so endless it's really not a problem? That couldn't have been more perfect. That's from Paula.
Yeah. I love it. That's just brilliant. I am known as the sheep photographer. And here in Cumbria, there's a lot of agricultural shows and they're becoming more popular for photographers to go and capture some different images. And so we're known as the sheeparazzi.
Brilliant.
And to be honest, I really don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with it because I'm making money out of photographing sheep. I clearly can photograph other things and I do, and that's not a problem. So I don't mind that.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So, okay, can I have another number then, please?
Oh, I'll have number 10, please, Angela.
Number 10. Okay. Do your clients usually have firm ideas about the type of images they want, or do you decide what will work best? That question's from Belinda.
I would say I like to give people a brief. So I have a form that I will send out to my clients and they will bring it back. So I need to know exactly what the image is going to be used for. How is it going to be used? It's a print or web or, need to know all of that. And quite often I do find that smaller businesses, particularly when they're setting up, they don't actually know what they want. And so that brief form really helps because it helps them tailor in so that I'm not just giving them a whole bunch of photographs and they're still none the wiser of what they really want. So that really helps tailor what we need. But I think a lot of people that choose me as a photographer choose me for the style of photography that I do and the type of photography I do already. And so I just stick to my style and the way I like taking photographs. And it seems to work because that's what they've approached. That's why they're using me over somebody else, I think, in the process.
Yes. I think that speaks of the importance of having the images that you want to take showing on your website as well and your Instagram and all of those other places, because then people see the work that you love to do, and if they like it, they come to you. Rather than, say if you hate shooting black and white, but you've got one great one, you put it up and everybody wants you then to do black and white pictures or something.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and I think that's really important as a professional photographer that you actually do shoot what you enjoy, because it stops the work being tedious, boring, exhausting from nerves, trying to do something that you're not really comfortable with. And I do turn down commissions that are out of my scope of practice. If I'm not really comfortable with something, I won't do it. I'm not the best person for the job. I'm quite happy to reflect on that and give them somebody else's details who's probably better at it than me.
Well, it's nice to be able to be in that position. I guess if you're a bit more up against it, then you probably have to take everything that you're offered. But if you're not, could I have another number, please?
Oh, I feel like I'm on countdown. Can I have a 6, please, Angela?
You can have a 6. Okay. Oh, who are your influences and favourite photographers? That's from Rebecca.
Oh, that's a really lovely one. I've already mentioned one photographer already. And I met Verity Milligan and Rich Jones on a sunrise photography tour here in the Lake District about 6 years ago. And they had a massive impact on me. I'd followed them on social media. I was a bit of a fangirl when I first met them. And I just had a wonderful day with them both. They were so generous with their time and their skills and their knowledge. And they're both really good friends now, which is a lovely position to be in.
Lovely.
There's a photographer called Jans Bertrands. He's done lots of photographic books called Earth from the Air with a helicopter before drones were about and things like that. But he did a book called Good Breeding, where he went to a Paris agricultural show and took these stunning photographs of the animals and their owners that were there on show. I just love things that are a bit different. I don't like to photograph things that other people have photographed. Now, I have met quite a few photographers on the way talking at the photography show. I love your reviews on stuff and seeing photographs of your dog.
Thank you.
I think what you've done for the industry, Angela, is absolutely astounding, and I'm waiting one day for you to have an MBE.
Thank you very much.
I think there are people in the industry whose photography, I may not necessarily admire the photography, but I admire what they do. And, it's funny. There's some very influential people. I mean, Doug Chinnery, his photography is off the wall, but he was just fantastic and supportive. His actual photography, I met Nigel Danson recently, and I do love his work. His landscape stuff's extraordinary. Yes. Very talented photographer. But there are some photographers, like some of the Twitter photographers, that have just, I think because they've been there and they still comment. There's a guy called Sean who always comments. There's a guy called Steve that always goes, nice to see you again, Amy. I haven't seen you for ages, blah, blah, whatever. People that I bump into in the Lake District. And I think everybody has had an influence at certain points.
Yeah. Okay, so it's your penultimate number then, please.
Oh, let's go for number 1, please.
Number 1. Okay, this is another from Paula, actually. How do you make sure your photography continues to evolve?
Continue to learn. I know exactly where my weaknesses are. I do debrief myself still, even if it's just in my head on the way back from commissions and things like that. And even my book, I go through it and I think, oh, that's not very good. I could do that better next time. Or that one's, I haven't quite hit the photo. I've got to make sure of that one. And every time there's a new firmware update, I make sure I'm really familiar with my technology, my equipment. I know there's lots of things at the minute with my flash, particularly. I've just got some new flash systems I really need to learn and get to grips with. And there is so much in photography. I'm tip of the iceberg. I don't know. There's loads that I don't know what I'm doing yet, and loads of terminology. I tried to fill out one of those LinkedIn forms about being a professional in the area of expertise, and I think it came out with something like 23%. I knew 23% of photography. I'm just like, I'm surprised it's that much.
I was going to say, that sounds quite high, actually.
No. But I think it's just always being aware of where your weaknesses are and trying to strengthen them and be the best you can be.
Okay. So what technique is next in your pipeline to try and learn then or master? Is it to do with flash? Yeah,
I love these off-camera flash. I think HDR's fantastic I do like taking sort of 5 images in sort of indoor situations or even outdoor, really, because I hate using a tripod. But the flash is something that really can, just being able to fill in the shadows for outside portraits or with animals, things like that, can make a massive difference to the image. But it's got to be done well. It's also can be done really poorly. And it's just practice, I think, with the off-camera flash is what I'm focusing on. I think 2024 is the flash year.
Right. Look forward to seeing some of those images. I mean, the great thing about digital photography is if you've got the kit, it costs you nothing to experiment.
Absolutely.
And play around and get the result. With film, good grief, it costs a fortune. Can I have your last number then, please?
Let's see. Let's have number 9.
Number 9. Okay. Oh, this is from Carmen. When you're photographing a person, how do you make them feel relaxed and comfortable and yet still show their personality?
Oh, yeah, that's a lovely question. And I, of course, doing 40 Farmers, I had to photograph people that I didn't know. And I always like to have a portrait of the people at the beginning of each chapter of the farms because people buy into faces. But we need those faces to be really comfortable because we won't look at the photograph. And so I think it is desperately important to capture people relaxed and natural. And so I often will do the portrait after I've spent a bit of time with them, and I won't start off with that photograph so that we've got to know each other a little bit. But equally, my role as a physiotherapist, I had to, in a very short space of time, interview people and get to the bottom of what was causing their problem very quickly, in often quite an intimate environment, close to close, needing to get people undressed to look at parts of their body and stuff. And I've got those transferable skills now that I do find made a massive difference in my photography, is that I seemingly get people quite relaxed, quite comfortably, find some common ground. Family is a great thing to chat about. People often will relax talking about something that feels personal to them, their dogs, their animals, whatever. but something positive, something that's nice that they want to talk to you and share with while you're taking the photos. And if you can take their mind off it while you're taking their photographs, I think that's a really important thing. But I did find when I was going through my photographs of 40 farms to build a talk, because I do a behind the scenes talk for camera clubs and things, all of my photographs of the portraits, everybody's laughing hysterically, and then I'll get one decent one. So I don't know what I say to them behind the scenes. We're having an absolute scream, and I've got these really hilarious photographs of laughing, and then I've got to get a mildly serious one for the book.
Yes. They are really nice to capture, aren't they, those laughing photographs? But yes, I know what you mean. They're not necessarily what you need for the book. But
no, exactly.
Thanks for those tips. And thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, Amy. It's been absolutely wonderful to hear from you.
Thanks ever so much for having Angela. It's been brilliant to chat to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. You'll find links to Amy's social media channels and website in the show notes. I'll be back with another episode soon, so please subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform and tell all your friends and followers about it. You'll also find SheClicks on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube if you search for SheClicksNet. So until next time, enjoy your photography.